Hello and welcome to the Hartley House podcast. Hopefully, again, if this is your second episode that you're watching, thank you for tuning in today, whether it's on audio only or you're tuning in from YouTube as well. Just a reminder, my name is Caroline and I'm Hartley House's Community Engagement and Prevention Lead. And today we have an amazing guest who I will allow her to introduce herself.
Thank you, Caroline. My name is Jen Metcalf. I'm the Community Engagement and Prevention Director at Hartley House. So Caroline and I work very closely together. I'm so excited to be here today.
Absolutely. So we're going to do a little bit of an interview style today. But before we get into the interview questions, just wanted to share a content warning, right? So as people who work at Hartley House, we talk about power-based violence, which is like the overarching term for domestic violence, intimate partner violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, and child abuse. So we will most likely be talking about those topics during our podcasts and for today. So if you need to tune us out at all, skip ahead, please do so. Please practice self-care. We will not be offended in the slightest if you tune us out. Actually, we probably won't even know. Yeah. But again, thank you so much for tuning in, and I'm really excited for you all to get to know a little bit more about Jen here.
Thanks.
Yeah. So Jen, I know you shared your title, but what do you do at Hartley House?
So at Hartley House, I'm over the Community Engagement and Prevention Department, which consists of a few different areas, I would say, a few different categories. So we do have the prevention side of things. So that's the P and CEP, the prevention work. And that's really about us trying to go out and prevent power-based violence through different means. And I think a lot of times when people think of prevention, they think of education, which is a starting place, but it's not the ending place. And education is really only bringing you into an understanding of the issue. It's not telling you how to stop it, really. So I feel like our team, and especially you, Caroline, have done a lot of work of really utilizing what we would call evidence-based practices. And so that means that these are practices that are deemed to be the best way to go about preventing violence. And those were come to through data collection, studies, science, medicine. A lot of college campuses over the years have engaged in a lot of studies and trying different programs to see if we could reduce rates of sexual assault. And one of the there's really four, and I think at some point we can really dig into the different kind of various methods of sexual violence prevention. But one that we really lean heavily into is bystander intervention. And I feel like that's a big part of our department's work is bringing in bystander intervention principles to all the work that we do. So how do we, if we see a situation that looks like it could be harmful, how do we safely intervene? And really equipping people to do that work. We also are doing prevention work in Frederick County, Maryland public schools. So we have a team who's going in. They are talking to middle school and high school students about healthy relationships, dating violence prevention. They're talking about consent, how to set healthy boundaries, both in dating relationships and with friendships, because those can be tricky too. And then also just about how to be safe online. How do we prevent online grooming and things like that? And then we have our engagement work, which is telling the community about Hartley House, because if you're not, I don't know if you're familiar with Frederick County, Maryland, or maybe you are, but a lot of people don't realize it's the largest county in land mass in the state of Maryland. And it's one of the fastest growing suburbs of the Washington, D.C. metro area. So we have a lot of people here. We have a lot of land here. People are spread out once you get out into the county. And so we need them to know that Hartley House is here. And we want them to know about all the services that we provide, because it's a lot.
Yeah.
And so our team is also engaging with the community, like going, Caroline, do you want to talk about the libraries?
Absolutely. So we partner with the Frederick County Public Libraries all of the time. There's, I think, like 10, maybe more than that, branches in the Frederick County area, Frederick County, Maryland, for those who are not from the state of Maryland, and that is in the U.S. if you're not from the U.S. Hello, international listeners. But what we do is we partnered with a bunch of the different library branches
to not only talk about Hartley House and our services, but also do survivor speaker panels. So we have 3 or 4 survivor speakers go to the library branches and they answer a set of predetermined questions. So they have time to really prepare their answer. And those questions often are questions that people would commonly ask survivors, right? So questions like, why did you stay? Why didn't you feel like you could leave? What supports did you need in order to leave that situation? And allow the survivor or victim to share their perspective. Because so many times, even if the question is not trying to be harmful or be victim blaming, it can feel that way to a victim or survivor. And so our hope is that it empowers survivors to share their side of the story and to really talk about why it's very, very difficult to leave an abusive relationship. And then we also leave time for the audience to ask questions to our survivor speakers. And they're always allowed to say no if they don't want to respond, or sometimes they'll give like a little
Yeah.
a little nose rub or an ear pull, like a little baseball sign
Yeah.
to let us know, I'm not very comfortable with answering that question. And so a survivor speaker never has to answer a question if they're not comfortable. We try to put parameters in place, and it also allows myself or Jen or whoever's there on the professional side of things to step in and answer a question from that professional side if we notice that none of our speakers are willing to or are comfortable answering that question. It's really great. The community seems to really love the survivor speaker panels. The survivors really love the survivor speaker panels. And it's a great way to hear from multiple different perspectives and from multiple different stories in one setting. We also have some therapy dogs come with us too, which is great. We had one of my favorite therapy dogs. His name is Giuseppe.
Oh my gosh.
His commands
He's the
are only in
cutest.
Italian.
And Giuseppe came and sat next to the survivor speakers at our latest panel.
He's like one of the group now.
Yeah,
he's
he
just
is one of
always
the
out
group.
there. That's so nice.
Yeah.
And I know you're going to get into a deeper dive on Survivor Speaker Bureau and other episodes, but I just do love because it does bring in all the different components of our department. It's empowerment, it is, engagement and awareness, and it's also creating these spaces for survivors to be able to tell their story in a way that could then turn into it's just creating more opportunities for them.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. And really, the final piece of the community engagement and prevention work is that engagement, it's outreach, it's going into the communities. As we're recording this right now, it's springtime. And so it's getting warm out, which means more people are outside, which means in Frederick and our community, it's tabling season. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities where we can go, we can set up a table with Hartley House information. We get to connect with community members who may not come across us otherwise. And that's just another way for us to get out information about Hartley House. And it gives our staff and volunteers an opportunity to engage with the community alongside us. So that's kind of the overview of the community engagement and prevention department. We're doing a lot of stuff in a lot of places. So hopefully if you hear us on the podcast and you're around this summer, maybe you'll see us at one of our events.
Yeah, that would be awesome. So Jen, what interested you about the power-based violence prevention space?
So I started working in what I would call like prevention, outreach, that kind of stuff, in my first job out of college. I was started out as a volunteer at a nonprofit in Raleigh, North Carolina, and that really helped me see the impact you can have when you are talking to people about issues and giving them actual tools to make their lives better or to help make the lives of someone else better. And then I also had just experiences with some of my very close friends and family members who had experienced different types of power-based violence in their life, and just hearing their stories, realizing that people weren't there for them when they needed it, or there weren't resources there when they needed it. And so I actually was, I don't know if you all remember, when the Sanford swimmer case was happening. Stanford, California. Is it Stanford or Sanford?
Stanford. I believe Stanford.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Stanford. And there was a situation where a woman had been sexually assaulted by a guy who was a swimmer on the swim team at Stanford University.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just this huge, it gained national attention because the judge was basically like, he didn't want to give this guy a harsh sentence because he had all this potential and he didn't want to ruin his life. And it was just such a crappy way to like view the situation. And at the time, the victim had not been identified. She was known as Jane Doe, and she had written this victim empowerment statement to the person who assaulted her and to the judge. And I was reading that, and there was just this part of that story where she's really talking through what had happened to her that night. And I will say, like, another piece of it that made it so infuriating is that there were witnesses. People actually intervened to stop his assault. So it wasn't even her reporting a thing that had happened that no one had seen. There were witnesses. And so for the judge to have this take on it just felt even more like it. Well, so if we even have witnesses to corroborate the story, how's the survivor supposed to ever feel safe telling if even eyewitness isn't enough to bring justice? So it was just all these different things. And a lot of people were talking about it, but reading her story, she talks about being in the hospital, having an exam after the assault. And there was one of the nurses was picking leaves out of her hair, and just how that just made her feel like a person. And I just had this moment of like, that's who I want to be. I want to be the person in the room picking the leaves out of someone's hair on the worst day of their life. Like that just felt like a very tangible thing you could do to help someone. And around the same time, a friend of mine had started working at Hartley House in our medical accompaniment program. And I was just telling her I read this Jane Doe story. And now it just so we can kind of close that loop. We know now her name's Chanel Miller.
Yes.
She's written an amazing book.
Yes,
She's such like an outspoken advocate for survivors and justice in sexual assault cases. But so, yeah, my friend was like, had just started being a medical accompaniment advocate at Hartley House. And she was telling me about it. I'm like, that's what I want to do. I want to do that. And so medical accompaniment at Hartley House means that we have people who are trained to go to the local hospital if someone's taken there in the aftermath of a sexual assault, a domestic violence or intimate partner violence, or if someone is brought to the hospital who is thought to have been trafficked. So one of our medical accompaniment advocates goes to the hospital, meets them there, and we really are just a safe space in a room where other people, just by the nature of their jobs, are also doing difficult things, collecting evidence, asking questions. And again, we can dig into that medical accompaniment program on a later episode, but it just is such a great program and a piece of the work, again, that not everyone knows about. So that was my entry into Hartley House.
Absolutely.
Was working as an on-call medical accompaniment advocate and then working on Hotline as a sub.
Yeah, Chanel Miller and her book Know My Name is one of my favorite books of all time. So I really appreciate you bringing that up. If you haven't read that book already and are interested, though, definitely take your time. It's a heavy one.
It is a heavy one.
Yeah.
Really good.
What other professionals do you typically work with on a daily basis at Hartley House?
That's a great question. One of the things I love about Hartley House is that we are really so interconnected with other agencies and organizations in Frederick County, Maryland. We work really closely with Frederick County Public Schools, and we already mentioned the libraries. We also work with the state's attorney's office, with local law enforcement, with the hospital, also other like social service organizations. And in addition to kind of the obvious ones, DSS and Child Protective Services, we work with an organization called the Child Advocacy Center that supports children and families in the aftermath of power-based violence. And then like the Frederick Center, which is our local LGBTQ organization. We like to do collaborations with other organizations who are also just like serving the community. So we really do a lot. And some of them are, again, more obvious. Some of them are maybe not as obvious, but they're a lot of fun. Like we've worked with the Frederick Arts Council and the Delaplane, which is a local art museum. really just to try and create more opportunities for our clients and our survivors to be more supported and making sure they're taken care of, but then also just to kind of create space for our clients and our staff to be able to just know what's going on in Frederick and to have space. I love like what we did with the Delaplane where they did art workshops for us.
Oh my goodness, they were so amazing. Yeah. We were able to sit on the art workshops, so which was so nice.
Yeah. So really just, and one of the things we do when we think of this idea of Connect and Thrive, which is, a program that we have, is really how do we connect with the different places and people in Frederick County so that the county can thrive, so that individuals can thrive. And I really feel like that work that our department specifically does is where those connections are really made and where that engagement happens.
Absolutely. I mean, we're only one nonprofit with about, 70 employees, maybe a little bit more, which is a lot, don't get me wrong. But working across communities and across organizations is just going to help individuals. Yeah. And like you're saying, especially if there's an intersection in somebody's identity, working with a place like the Frederick Center can be really helpful so that we're making sure that that person gets the most, the best care for that intersection of their identity.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Obviously, we're working with power-based violence survivors. That's pretty heavy work. What is the most difficult part of working at Hartley House?
I think there's a couple parts that are difficult. I think the top of mind is just the fact that people are going through such difficult things. And, I think a lot of people, a lot of people don't actually understand the breadth and depth of the violence and how difficult it can be for clients. And so I think there's just that piece of knowing that people are going through such traumatic things. But I think a part that's really difficult for me is, for especially our work, is how do we get the community to connect with the fact that these things are happening, and to understand that if you are like walking around and existing, you have absolutely been impacted by power-based violence. You just might not know it. And because again, people kind of default to stereotypes and only women can be victims of domestic violence, and it has to look one way, and well, human trafficking can't be happening here because that's this thing where someone's snatched off the streets and taken to a foreign country, and that stuff just doesn't happen here. So I think for our work, really getting beyond that barrier of it doesn't happen here or it doesn't happen to me, to get people to care. Absolutely. And to get people to pay attention, and to, obviously we always want them to support our work financially, but supporting the people in your life in a way that's not causing harm. And back to what you were talking about with the survivor speakers, sometimes people, that question of like, why don't they just leave? And like, it's not easy. And coming to us and for resources so that you can be a better friend, a better partner, a better support to the people in your life, so you aren't accidentally adding more stress to an already difficult situation. I think that's the difficult part, is getting people to understand it is happening, and you probably know someone that it happened to.
Just based on statistics, even if this person or a person hasn't disclosed to you that they're a victim or survivor, statistic-wise, you probably know at least one person, probably more, who have experienced some form of power-based violence. And to that note, too, I was recently doing a training up in the county, and we talked about how domestic violence, intimate partner violence is not just physical. There's financial abuse, there's emotional abuse, there's verbal abuse, religious, cultural, right? There's so many different variations. And I was speaking with somebody after who was like, thank you, because I had no idea, and I'm now realizing that like my childhood, my life, I think was abusive. Yes. And I didn't realize that.
I think that's really difficult, and it's both empowering and difficult to have this new piece of information about that, but I also think sometimes when people are like, I don't know anyone that's happened to, sometimes that says more about them than it does about the other people. Because it might be that if you can't think of a single person in your life that's experienced some type of power-based violence, it might be because no one feels safe telling you that.
And that's not fun to hear, but that's unfortunately the reality, right? And our hope is that everyone can be a safe person for the survivors in their lives. But obviously, while this work can be quite difficult, there's a reason why a lot of us are in this field. So what is the most rewarding part of working for Hartley House?
I mean, besides this podcast,
obviously. No,
it sounds so cliche, but I love the people. I love our staff. I feel like we just have this amazing group of people on our staff who have so many gifts and talents and just ways to support survivors, ways to care about survivors, and an ability to endure some of the worst types of abuse, to be able to sit to be able to sit with someone while they're talking about that and even going through it, and to be able to care for them in a way that's very healing and very safe. I mean, we just work with just phenomenal people. I think our team is so fantastic. And I really love getting to connect with Frederick County, and getting to know the county in these different ways, and getting to meet different people that I wouldn't have met if I didn't have this job, and getting to understand really the nuances of the needs in the county in ways that if you weren't digging below the surface, that in a way that our work just does, because you have to know what people need and where to meet them. I don't think I would have had that if I weren't working at Hartley House. And I do think people kind of joke about Frederick being such a unique community, and it really is. But I feel like our nonprofit, not just Hartley House, but I feel like the nonprofit kind of family in Frederick County is just amazing. Like we're always doing stuff together. We're always at places together. I love the connections I've made, and we also get to know what's out there. So if we have a friend or someone who's like, I'm really struggling with this thing, I feel like we kind of have this insider track on,
Absolutely.
You should contact this people, or you should reach out, or like, if you have a friend who's like, I really want to volunteer and get involved with something, and maybe Hartley House isn't the right place, I can think of 20 other places. Let me connect you with my friend over at this organization,
Absolutely. I think Frederick County is so special in that way because everyone is so connected and everyone truly cares about people, right?
Yeah.
And that's something I feel not only from working here, but also living here as well. As you may have noticed, we have some art behind us, so we want to do our artist highlight, which is Jessie Bunk. You may have heard us highlight her in our first episode, but she's an ambidextrous artist and survivor speaker of intimate partner violence. In the process of becoming diagnosed after a decade of symptoms being dismissed and documented, she rediscovered her natural talent and ability to draw with both hands at the same time, and since then, her colorful ambidextrous art has been recognized by and shared by Sharpie Marker multiple times on social media platforms, along with the mushroom documentary Fantastic Fungi, sharing her ambidextrous work on their social media platforms as well. Her multimedia and original artwork is on display and available at various locations around the state of Maryland, such as the Delaplane Arts Center, the Main Cup, Maxwell's Kitchen, and Elevated Wellness Solutions. She also performs and demonstrates live ambidextrous art for the public. And you could go ahead and follow her on Instagram at jmbunkart, JMBUNK art. And feel free to look up her LinkedIn tree in her Instagram bio. Thank you so much for tuning in to the official podcast of Hartley House, because every voice matters.